All right, so feel free to ask questions in between. So far we are into basic concepts. Once concepts are over, maybe in the next class, then we will move into real stuff, right? How do we implement these concepts? Okay, so we'll study these concepts today. I'm sure most of these you know. And what we achieve in the rest of the course to get all these things by different processes or different mechanisms, right? For example, confidentiality, we will use method called encryption. For integrity, we'll study concept called cryptographic hash. Availability is the technique that will make sure the system is up most of the time. We will not spend too much time, but normal methods are like redundancy. And from security perspective, what we can do is such that system is available for long time, avoid any disruptions like denial of service attacks. Okay. Then authenticity is essentially by making sure that the person is authentic or sending entity is authentic, right? Okay. We'll use some technique, right, for this. Say for example, authentic person is authentic, for example, can be ascertained by login process. Okay, or there are many methods that we study. Authorization is essentially how do you authorize a person to do certain tasks, right? See, not all the people in the system, any company, any organization, or any network are authorized to do everything. Okay, so how do we authorize some set of people with certain responsibility? Okay, this say for example, CEO of a company will have different rights than a junior employee, right? So we have some methods of doing authorization. Okay, all right. Non-repudiation is essentially making sure that I am whom I claim to be. It means that, for example, I am teaching you this course. Actually, I am the identity who is supposed to teach the course, right? I cannot, if somebody else in my place takes your class for a day or even half an hour, then that is non-rep, it will not fulfill the condition of non-repudiation. Okay, so so now we can think this in the context that if a person A is sending money to person B, okay, and then person A says that I am sending you $100 and in fact sends only $50. Okay, so here the non-repudiation comes into, so person cannot disagree on what person has said or on the identity. Access control we always do, like going into any company, for example, you visit any company, then they do access control, or on airports we have access control. Privacy, we know that we lose privacy by giving away information, right? For example, in Facebook or Twitter or whatever social media places, you give your identity deliberately and non-deliberately. It can also come from various sources, right? And then we'll look at what is the weakest link in the security overall. So these are the points we'll study, but before that, let's look at this. There has been one classical paper by Ken Thompson. He and he says that it's very it's impossible to get trust in a computing system. Okay, so for example, you have downloaded a software. Okay, for example, most of us download an app. How do you know that app does not contain malware? How do you know that? In fact, most of the mobiles and laptops, etc., are getting a lot of malware through downloads from various places. Even we cannot say that App Store or Google Play or whatever is a place where all applications have been tested. There have been millions of applications. Okay, do you think that Google or Apple will spend time and money to test every application? How do you know that these applications don't contain any virus? How do you ascertain that? Or malware? Anyone? So you download one app from say App Store. How do you know that it does not contain any malware? Any one of you, please tell me. Yeah? Okay, who can tell me? Saksham, are you there? Mayank Bansal? Hello, Mayank? Are you there or not? Or just
Yes,
logged
sir.
in? Oh yeah, tell me, what did I ask you?
Sir, actually, I joined just now.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm repeating the question. When you download an application from App Store, then how do you ascertain that the application does not contain any malware?
So we can run some antivirus on it.
You can run somewhere. Did you ever do that?
Yeah, sir. Actually,
In on mobile, did you do it? And does it also ascertain that app does not have any and any malware?
I'm not sure about this question, sir.
Okay, you say app can always say antivirus can always find out something. They look for certain signature of virus, right, or malware, and if it's not there, then this everything is fine. And you design a new kind of virus, then this antivirus etc. cannot ever find. Okay,
Oh,
so it is not always possible. It's not possible to trust the system. Okay, whatever be the system, whoever is written, how do you know that is 100% trustworthy? Okay, and second thing is that do you know how many bugs are there in say 1,000 lines of code which are not undetected, right? I mean, of course, even after testing, so many bugs are left out. Any idea? So usually between 1 to 5 bugs are will remain depending on who has done the coding and how old is the software. Okay, so imagine that 5 bugs are there every 1,000 lines of code, and you have 20 million lines of code in general, or any application will have, say, for example, few megabytes of code. Then imagine how many bugs are remaining in the application. Okay, so in general, any code that you have not created, you cannot trust. And Ken Thompson got this this is a very classical paper. So if you get time, then read yourself, right? You can't trust binary. So basically, what do you get? You know, when you get object code, right, a runnable code. Okay, so in the binary form. Okay, and when you, so how do you check any binary, right? So you basically, you by yourself, if you have to if you have to test whether this application is non-malicious, then you'll have to look at source code. Now source code is of course not available to you, right? Who will give your source code to you? So the first point is that you cannot. Second is that even if you get source code of the application, then are you sure that it is it does not have bug or it does not have malware? You look at the source code. What do you do with source code? Then you have to recompile it. Okay, when you recompile it, how do you know that compiler is non-malicious and is not inserting bug into your code? Okay, so basically now you have to look at the compiler's code, and then if you have done course of compiler, you will know the compiler is also written in higher level language. So this loop goes on and on. So to summarize, you can't trust a code that you have not created totally by yourself. You not create, so you have to be suspicious. And when you create your security mindset, you have to be suspicious that the application you are downloading is malicious. Okay, now for that you can use some basic rules that we should follow. First, you download it from source which is reliable. Say for example App Store or Google Store or whatever. These are all places where you can trust to some extent. But do you think that App Store will tell you that the application non-malicious? Do they give guarantee? No, they don't give any guarantee. So you have to just see that who has written the application and how long they have been writing. How many people have downloaded it so far, right? So all these indicate to the factor that there is some level of trust. And by the way, when for example, you install a printer or some uh, some software and ask for some device driver, because device may be new or a device driver has been updated, and you search in the on the internet, and you find somewhere in some site and you download it. Never do this. There's a good probability that it has malware. So what you do is that always go to the company. For example, I have printer by HP, and then I want device driver for that, then I will go to HP's website and then download the driver. Okay, there's a normal process. Okay, any question? Okay, according to this principle, you cannot trust anyone, not only for software but in the normal practice also. For example, a friend is asking from you a loan of 1 lakh of rupees. Okay, maybe later when you start earning, what do? There are two ways, right? If there is a very high degree of trust, very high degree of trust, you will give. And if you have money, right? But it's always better to get these things in writing. So give a loan. You say that I am fine with all your intentions, etc., and you are a great friend and relative, you are my brother or whatever. But still, my principle or the security principles tell me that I have to get all this thing in a stamp paper. Then fine. Okay, so that's the normal way of doing. And had I applied honestly in my life, had I applied this principle, I would have saved at least 2 crore. I'm just giving you an example. Okay, so always think that there is some malicious component or element even in the person, because person can also be malicious. All right. So now coming to the actual content of the course, so we'll study these in just 40 minutes or so. So these three entities called, these are three important properties called confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Together is called CIA model. You know, people used to show it this way: the confidentiality, integrity, availability. These are very closely linked. And the other aspects are authenticity, accountability and non-repudiation, access control, and privacy of controlled information. Okay, so you look at some of these. So computer security in general, when we'll study techniques, we'll focus on three things. So first is confidentiality. Something is confidential, it's a confidential to you and the person you want it to be confidential to, right? For all other entities, suppose you are sending something, some important communication to your spouse, then it's a very confidential thing, right? And so it should remain confidential between two of you. Nobody in between, it could be anybody, should be able to see this contents, right? That's a confidentiality. Now integrity is that whatever, integrity does not say that the contents will remain confidential, so somebody in between can see it, but we should not be able to modify this, right? So it means that when you tell that I love you, okay, and this person in between should not change this content to I hate you, okay. This is called integrity. So integrity is, will remain. So integrity does not say about confidentiality, because this person in between can see that, can see the contents of message that you are sending, okay. uh, Now we are talking in terms of communication, right? But in general also a document can remain confidential in your file, and you will have to do certain things about it, okay. Similarly, integrity, when you write a will, for example, the will should, may not be confidential, right? But will of a person should not be changed, right? So its integrity must be preserved, okay. And third is availability. It means that preserving access, that system or whatever entity that's giving service, etc., should remain available, okay. So if you want to access a server, server should remain available, right? So we are preserving access, okay. So these are the three important things that will focus in this course. First is confidentiality. We have already discussed this point. Confidentiality is concealment of information, right? What does it mean? If A is sending message to B, it should not be read by anybody, okay. When you and your spouse is talking to each other in a room, nobody should eavesdrop it, or listen to it from other room or something like that, right? So a lot of things should remain confidential, right? When a message is being sent, it should not be intercepted or should not be read by anybody else, okay. So it could be anything. Is a packet sniffing, you send an IP packet, IP, packets can be replicated, right? So a router will simply replicate it and send it to some rogue element or malicious person, right? So that's not possible. Illegal copying of something is also a normal, day-to-day life, is not something that's confidentiality will allow, okay. So it means that non-public information must remain accessible to must okay, non-public information must remain accessible to authorized party, okay. Something that we say is non-public should remain between the people who are supposed to have it, right? The people who are authorized to read that, okay. So one, of course, normal practice, we store information in the disk, cloud, server, etc. Okay, and there are ways to make it confidential. Similarly, on transit, when you send it over internet or over LAN, the information should remain confidential, right? So there must be mechanisms corresponding to both of these. And one of the very important mechanism is data encryption. Okay, you encrypt the data and the key is only at the recipient or with authorized people, then they can read it. And second is by procedural means, right? I mean, you put confidential information in a box and just lock the box, and the key is only with authorized people, right? Or to come out with policies and procedures to keep anything confidential. Second is integrity. Okay, any question on confidentiality? It's very simple, right? Okay. Next is integrity. As we said, something that we are sending or the document we are storing in hard disk should not change. Why? Unauthorized parties. So integrity is prevention of unauthorized changes. Okay, you are sending a message. A is sending a message, and in between is being intercepted, and the change contents of message is changed. It or it is tampered and released again, right? So this is integrity. So what this guy is sending is changed here. Okay, so this should not be allowed. Okay, what are the mechanisms? Access control, cryptographic checksums, like cryptography hashes. This is not the same hash that you use in search and search algorithms, right? This is a different hash. We will study that later. Or error correcting codes. So if you have this is message M1 and error correcting code or cryptographic hash here of this M1, okay, and somebody changes the contents of M1 to M2, then this hash, okay, will value should match with the contents or hash of M2 here. Okay, we'll study this concept little later, because hash gives you signature of what is inside. Okay, and if there is any changes here, the hash of that will not match with the contents of the message, right? So we'll study that. This a lot of questions will come to your mind that what if the hash value, see M1 is changed to M2, and what will happen if H of M2 is also sent, right? How will recipient know? So we'll answer all this when we study hashes and other things, right? All right. Integrity example is that MS Word document that you receive. In fact, this is one of the common ways of sending you viruses. Okay, MS Word document which looks good can contain malicious macro. You know the macros, right? You can write for Word document. For example, you can write macro for converting document in a particular form. Say you can change the fonts or whatever style, etc., etc. You can define using that. Or it could be integrity is that microprocessor chips is producing incorrect results with floating point calculation. So again, integrity is in question. Man in the middle is a very common word you will come across. Something that we seen here. This is man in the middle who intercepts it and changes the contents. Okay. All right. So we preserve integrity of data item when it's precise, accurate, meaningful, and useful, and most importantly, unmodified. And can only be modified by authorized people, right? But all right. So basically, the message should, when you are sending from one end to another end, its content should not change in between. Just think in these terms. Okay. Next point is availability. So availability is ability to use information or resource. Right? Resource should remain available. Okay, so A is sending message to B. If the message is taken away by malicious element, okay, and not sent in, it's not sent to B. Okay. So this could be because of anything, right? I mean, in real life, it could be because of server crashes or infrastructure disruption. Could also be because internet not working. Could be anything, right? Okay. When you're sending message from A to B, and there's a router right here, if this malfunctions, then you can't send it, right? So this also a way to ensure security is that system should remain available. Okay, so this property we have already discussed. Okay, availability also must ensure that there's a protection from so intentional deletion and disruption. Okay, you have, when you have a hard disk and that contains some important files and somebody removes the hard disk or even deletes everything in that, right? So then you don't have information availability. Denial of service attacks, you know what it is, right? I mean, you have a website, and then important part of the protocol is that whatever message it receives, it has to respond to, right? And most of the message, like for example, if you do ping, you will get the answer. Okay, if millions of people do ping, okay, to a server, it has to respond to each one of these. Now the server's time is just taken away by all these ping messages, and actual user will not be able to use the resource. That's called denial of service, because this user cannot access it. The services are denied to that, right? So properties of availability is timely response, fair allocation of resources, fault tolerance, and redundancy. Okay, any question up to this point? Yes or no?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. Now authenticity is, you call a person and you continue to speak, and then later on you come to know you're not talking to the person whom you wanted to. Okay, so this person here can act like A. Okay, so authenticity is knowing whom you're talking to. While B is talking to some person, say C, okay, then B should know that I'm talking to C. B shouldn't think that I'm talking to A. So it is unauthorized assumption of others and identity. Okay. So source should be, so B has received a message from A, then B should know that it has received message actually from A. Now, is it possible in IP network? You have done a networking course, right? All of you? IP packet, what is IP packet? What are the contents? Source IP address, destination IP address. Okay, and there are a lot of other things, and then there's a payload. Okay, when it is sent to some node, say for example B will receive it. Okay, will B come to know that it is actually coming from A and whose IP address is, say, S? Can you be 100% certain? Anyone? think about it. You possibly would have done IP first. When you receive a IP packet, are you 100% certain that is coming from a particular source whose IP address is given in the packet? Nandini, are you there? Hello? Okay, next, Nikita.
Sir, I don't think so that he
Mhm.
will be so much sure that from where the message has come.
Yeah, that's right. So when you receive an envelope or packet, right? Not even say for example, you get an inland letter or a ordinary envelope with a stamp on it. It says that it has come from me, for example. Are you certain that it has come from me? You cannot be certain. Anybody can write my name and drop a letter to you. Okay. Similarly, IP packet, anybody can write an IP packet and send it over internet. Is there a mechanism to check whether would router check that packet that's created has genuine IP address? No, nobody checks. And who has written that? I can write my own router. Okay, all right. So there is no so authenticity. Achieving authenticity on internet is an important task. Same thing can apply to Ethernet, right? Local area network. Okay, all right. Uh, all right. So this slide we have already seen. So authenticity is ability of system to confirm the identity of the sender. Okay, I can send you packet and write the name of somebody else, and there's no way for you to check whether it has come from me or somebody else. Same thing happens in the network, right? Okay. So anybody can send you. Nobody will stop sending you letters to the president of the country. Just send. Who knows that it has come from you, right? And and they will receive it and find out it's useful or not and throw it away. Similarly, when you receive something, have you will not know that who has sent. Okay, of course, people will write their name or whatever, right? And there have been mechanisms earlier. For example, when I used to send letter, will put letter in the envelope and then do my signature on top. Okay, or put a seal or something like that, right? But that again, anybody can do my signature and anybody can put a seal. Okay. So authenticity we usually are of two types: entity authentication. It means the person or the entity or the system that's sending use something. Its identity is ascertained or is a pakka. Okay. Second is data origin authentication. It provides assurance that the source of the data of the software is asserted. All right. So it's about entity and the data origin. I mean, you receive some data or IP packet from a source, so you should know who has created this data origin, right? This the source of data is this S1. You need to know that for certain activities or work. Okay, all right. So next is authorization. I mean, you have a party at home and you authorize different friends to do different things, right? Ask somebody to make halwa, maybe other person will go buy vegetable, third person will cut vegetables or whatever, right? So you authorize different people to do different tasks. Okay. So when you are doing access, for example, you are getting into airport, then you have authorized access. Are you authorized to get into a system? Okay. So only authorized entities are able to access resources. So for example, in many organizations, you cannot enter labs, many labs, right? Okay. So only the people who are working in that lab are authorized to get into it. For example, any organization you join, most likely you will not be allowed to get into IT room where a lot of servers are. Okay, because anybody even by mistake can cause disruptions, right? So that authorization, who all are authorized to do different tasks, has to be implemented in the system, right? Okay. So for example, you go try to get into a random company, you will not be allowed to enter, right? Only employees of that company will be allowed to enter. And then with employees that are allowed to enter, only few will be allowed to get into area they work. Okay. Or part of only some of them will be allowed to get into lab. Only some of them will be allowed to access the code of a particular product. Okay. So that is all possible through access control mechanisms. Okay. So authorization in general is governed by policy, that who all are allowed to do certain things. So there must be policy, for example, that people who have just joined the company, when you joined a company as a fresher, okay, a policy will say that you are allowed to do these things. You will access all these areas in the campus. Okay. Or you will be allowed to access the only part of the code, or in the beginning, in the training phase, you will be allowed to access only some area where you will allowed to do coding, etc., not the actual code. Okay. All right. uh, Even those who are able to code, only some will be allowed to check in and check out of the code, etc., etc. Okay. Okay. Next point is accountability and non-repudiation. So this is ability that is in general ability to identify principals responsible for past actions. Okay. There are two entities that are very commonly used, Alice and Bob, or both are friends, right? So Alice sends a message that I will give you $100. Okay. In fact, Alice sends only $50 to Bob. All right. So, but how can, and then Bob says that you have sent me only $50 by cash or whatever. Okay. Can, and Bob goes to court that Alice has given only $50 instead of $100. Okay, so can Bob prove that Alice has sent this message that I will give you $100? Alice can deny, I never said I will give you $100. Okay, all right. So what is okay, mechanism for this is transaction evidence or logs. Okay, so basically we can say is the principal, the principal, say Alice, cannot later credibly deny previous commitment or actions. That's called non-repetition. Okay, all right. Any question? Okay, let's move ahead, right? Next important point is access control that we do every day, right? You get into a system using, fingerprint. And we just instead of entering the code or showing your kind of access card, just use fingerprint, right? Or and so on, right? So we do access control nowadays for everything. For example, on mobile, I have face recognition, right? When I, instead of every time screen lock, instead of putting 6 digits, I will just use face recognition, which is access control. So I am allowed to use my mobile. Very simple, right? Because I have set this up because I don't want anybody else apart from me to use my mobile. Okay, so system will not, so if I have face recognition, is very safe method. Okay, so in general we use these three important concepts: authentication, authorization, access control, that we have studied. Please go through it again. And then we have this kind of model in general. There is a subject, and it could be a person, or it could be a process, or it could be a program, wants to access an object. Okay, anything, right? Your file, your server, your whatever. You may want to access a server, right? And there has to be a mode of access. Basically, how? Okay. So access could be of types read, write, or execute if it's a data item. Okay. And is governed by policy, which is authorization. Who all can do what? First thing is that suppose is Alice. Can Alice access this object? Say database 1. So there has to be policy, you will say yes, right? Then there has to be also policy what part of database she can access, what in that database she can access, right? So in general, we will have to see in security these three components: subject, object, and mode of access, and protocols are around this. Okay? Privacy is something that we know is very important. So basically, it involves personally sensitive information, how to protect, control, and share it, right? Now for us, it's very important to preserve privacy, because from privacy, if the privacy is not preserved, then all kinds of attacks can happen. Okay, the privacy for you is, for example, or any one of us is, okay, if person knows about us, right, then it's not private, right? Or similarly, any message or document that's supposed to remain private within, with you or somebody else, it's known to everyone, it's not private, right? And can be used then, right? So like email addresses, home address, PAN, social security number, passport number, credit card numbers, etc., etc. See how we are defined as a person, right? See, a criminal sitting in North Korea doesn't know that I'm a nice person. Or even if he knows a nice person, how does it matter? Right? For me, he is an entity who owns few lakhs, who has a bank account, and bank account number is this, the email address is this, home address is this, spouse name is this, children's names are these, and so on and so forth, right? What is my PAN number, what is my social security number or Aadhaar card number, etc., etc., or my credit card number. These are, criminals will view me from this perspective. Okay, and as much as possible, I should keep this confidential. Okay, on airport, for example, I normally don't show my Aadhaar card. Okay, I will show my PAN card. Even if somebody knows it, doesn't matter really. They can't play with it. Similarly, we define anonymous. See, you can do anything anonymously, right? Sometimes legally, but criminals also do in not so legal way, right? So when a person's actions or involvement are not linkable to person's identity, you can pose as a Prime Minister of India and can send some message in some social media site, okay, by hacking, etc., right? So that's not legal, right? Anonymously you can send a message to somebody, right? When your public identity is not linked to what the actions that you are doing. Okay, and the last point that I want to discuss today is about the weakest link. What is the weakest link in the whole security chain? Let's assume a security consists of multiple factors. What is the weakest link? Okay, so these are various things that you do, and something which is the weakest in the chain will be the reason for security to not work, right? So security system is as strong as is the weakest link. So this is the weakest link, and criminals will attack only this weakest link. Then you can apply this to your home also, right? You have built a beautiful house, and you have electronic locks and cameras, etc., etc. But you have glass doors which anybody can cut in just few minutes. So then the weakest link in your all home security is nothing but these glass panels. Okay, all right. So the weakest link in supply chain, the whole security chain, is what? Humans, right? So I mean, one of the very important way that breaches do happen is by phishing. Okay, or by say for example, you trick somebody in giving you user ID and password. It's called social methods, right? Social threads. So basically, say for example, what do you do if you have to enter an office, right? And you're not authorized person to enter that. One very simple way of doing this is that there is a smokers group, right? I mean, a lot of smokers are in any company and they go out for a smoke. Okay, and then you will find many of them, sometimes around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and so on. So you go there, you create a fake ID card which resembles company's ID card. Okay, you go there, mingle with those guys, because in a big company like, for example, IBM or Accenture, lakhs of employees, nobody knows who sits, in next cubicle and so on. So just go pose as one of them, talk little bit about, what are you doing and food is bad and all that, and then tailgate them. When they are entering, just tailgate and get into it, right? Get in the system. Okay, that's a very common way of getting into a system. Or any organization will have back doors, and smokers or people or janitors will go out of that, uh, and then you also follow that. Okay, it could be many other ways, right? For example, even some of my good friends have been cheated, getting a phone call that after getting a phone call that your points are expiring in credit card, you'll get an OTP and then just tell us, and then you will points you will be paid in rupees, right? And finally this OTP corresponds to some corresponds to a transaction where a person has taken away say few lakhs of rupees, right? Okay, so all that is possible, but human beings are the social elements, and they can be fooled and cheated, and important aspects, greed and so on and so forth, right? So that humans are in general the weakest link in the whole security, right? And there is no patch for human stupidity. And patch is some a small piece of software, correcting software you send, and patch is applied where the bugs are, right? Humans can't be patched. Okay, because in general people don't like conveniences. People like convenience or ease of use. So if security system is too complex, they find out ways to bypass that. Okay, and this point we have already discussed. If system is unusable, if security system is unusable, it will be unused. All right. Okay, and in general programmer makes lot of mistakes. Despite knowing, they continue to make similar mistakes. All right. And then social engineering, there's a proper word of this kind of stupidity where people can be tricked or fooled. Okay. So social engineering attacks exploit other person's trust and access for personal gains, right? A person will never think that the person whom is talking to is smoking with him, it looks similar to him. It is also talk software engineering. Could be a malicious person, right? Okay, all right. Okay, to summarize, important concept in information security are confidentiality, integrity, availability, authenticity, authorization, non-repudiation, access control, privacy, and the weakest link, which is humans. Okay, any question? All right then, thank you.